I had been stationed on the outer perimeter of Neridia Prime for nearly 3 months, patrolling the jagged cliffs and radioactive plains that marked the edge of human space. My unit, composed entirely of soldiers like me, was assigned a mission as monotonous as it was critical: prevent unauthorized access to the settlements of the Neridians. The Interstellar Alliance had always been cautious. Humans and Neridians coexisted peacefully, but misunderstandings could escalate into full-blown conflicts faster than a neutron flare across the void. That day began like any other. The sun of Neridia Prime burned pale against the horizon, slicing through the purple haze of ionized gases that formed the atmosphere. I was finishing my morning rounds, checking the security grid around Sector Delta 7, when a faint hum vibrated through my comm unit. It wasn't a sound I recognized, a low-frequency resonance that hinted at technology far more advanced than ours. My instincts told me to approach cautiously. I gripped my pulse rifle and scanned the horizon. That's when I saw it.
A door.
Not just any door, but one shimmering with a translucent, iridescent light that seemed to float above the rocky terrain. It had appeared out of nowhere, embedded in a wall of crystalline rock that had been there for millennia. The comm system was silent, no signals, no transmissions. And yet, something about the door pulsed with life. I approached slowly, boots crunching on the jagged crystals. That's when a voice spoke, soft, melodic, and undeniably authoritative, right into my mind. Open the door. It wasn't threatening. It wasn't even insistent. It was curious, almost playful. I froze. Mind-to-mind communication with a Neridian was rare and usually restricted to high-ranking diplomats. Soldiers like me were trained to ignore mental contact unless it was a direct emergency. "Who's there?" I asked aloud, unsure if the entity could hear me or if this was a hallucination from too much exposure to the ionized gases. "A friend," the voice replied. "But I've made a mistake. Open it, human soldier, and you will understand." I scanned the surroundings. No signs of life. No weapon, no drone, no holographic projection, just the door. But something in the cadence of the voice unsettled me. There was familiarity in it, as if I had heard it before, though I knew that was impossible. Still, protocol or not, I was curious. A part of me, a soldier's instinct honed for identifying anomalies, wanted to resist. Another part, a human's insatiable curiosity, urged me forward. I reached out and pressed my hand against the smooth surface. The door vibrated under my touch, a resonance that felt alive, like it was reading my intentions. And then, without warning, it opened. I stepped through and immediately found myself in a world that defied logic. The air smelled sweet, like ripe alien fruit, and colors shifted unnaturally, as though the spectrum itself had been rewritten. The landscape resembled a palace courtyard, but not one built by hands. Towering flora spiraled skyward in impossible geometries, their leaves shimmering like glass. Waterfalls flowed upward, defying gravity, pouring into clouds that glowed with a soft, internal light. And there, standing in the center of it all, was her. The being before me was humanoid, yet unmistakably Neridian. She had the tall, lithe build typical of her kind, skin that shimmered like liquid silver, and eyes that glowed faintly violet. But what made my heart seize was the aura of royalty she radiated, the unmistakable presence of the Queen Lyris. "You should not be here," she said softly, though there was no malice. "I am the heir of the Queen, and I made a mistake." I blinked. The heir? Why am I here? She hesitated, looking as though she were weighing her words. "I meant to open the door for someone else. Someone who could safeguard our future. But I chose incorrectly. You opened it." "Me? I didn't choose anything. I just followed the call," she finished, a trace of amusement in her voice. Her expression softened. Yes, that's it. You followed the call. And now, I am bound to reveal myself to you. I frowned, trying to process her words. It sounded like a game or a trap, but the honesty in her gaze made me pause. There was no threat, no pretense. Just truth. She led me through the palace grounds, speaking of things I barely understood. Political structures, cosmic treaties, and the fragile balance between human colonies and Neridian systems. I learned that her mother, Queen Lyris, had established the alliance with humans centuries ago, a pact so intricate that even minor errors could unravel decades of peace. Her heir, the one who had summoned me, was tasked with evaluating potential protectors, individuals who could bridge the gap between our species. And, apparently, the heir had made a miscalculation. Most would never understand, she said, walking alongside me. They would see this as intrusion, not opportunity. I glanced at her. Opportunity for what? Her lips curved into a faint smile. To prevent what is coming. I didn't understand. Not yet. But before I could ask more, alarms blared, a sudden, piercing signal that vibrated through the palace floor. Holographic panels materialized, showing fleets of ships moving through the atmosphere. Human, Neridian, and something else. Unknown ships. Hostile. You weren't meant to see this, she whispered. But now you are, and there is no turning back. The next hours were a blur of chaos. I found myself fighting alongside her, not as a soldier under orders, but as an ally. The unknown fleet descended, plasma beams slicing through the air. Neridian defense systems flared, but the attackers were precise, coordinated. They were not random raiders. They were mercenaries trained to hit the balance between human and Neridian forces. And yet, amid the chaos, the heir who had summoned me was nowhere to be seen. I realized then that their mistake was not accidental. The heir had intentionally led me here, knowing I would act differently than a typical Neridian. I was unpredictable in ways the enemy could not anticipate. They want to destabilize the alliance, she said, firing a beam rifle with uncanny accuracy. And you are the key. I shot back, instinct taking over. But even in battle, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to her words. Key to what? To whom? After what felt like days, though it was only hours, the battle ended. The enemy fleet retreated, leaving scars on the palace grounds and smoke rising from the once pristine sky. I collapsed beside her, exhausted, mud and plasma residue covering both of us. You are stronger than I imagined, she said, helping me to my feet. And braver than most of my people. The heir they knew you would be. Wait, I said, panting. You mean this was a test? She nodded. Not a test of strength, of loyalty, of courage, of heart. They needed someone who could see beyond duty and act when no one else would. And you did. I stared at her, the weight of realization pressing down on me. The heir had gambled on a human soldier to protect their people. On me. I felt a mixture of pride, disbelief, and unease. So what happens now? I asked quietly. She looked at me with eyes that shimmered like the first light of dawn. Now you stay. The door you opened is no longer just a passage. It is a bridge. Between our people. Between you and me. The implication hit me like a solar flare. I had crossed a line I never knew existed. Not just in territory, not just in diplomacy, but in something profoundly personal. Days turned into weeks. I learned the intricacies of Neridian culture, of their language, their philosophy, their combat techniques. And she, her name, I learned, was Caliph, guided me through it all, sometimes harshly, sometimes with a delicate kindness that felt almost human. The heir never revealed themselves. I wondered if they had truly made a mistake, or if their plan had been intentional all along. In truth, I began to suspect the latter. Every interaction, every battle, every lesson seemed orchestrated to bring me closer to understanding Caliph, and perhaps to understanding myself. One evening, as the twin moons rose above the horizon, Caliph brought me to the same crystalline door that had started it all. "It can never be undone," she said softly. "You opened this door, and now it is part of you as much as it is part of us." I nodded, gripping the railing of the floating bridge that arched above the glowing valley. "I didn't plan this. I didn't choose it." "No," she admitted, "but sometimes the universe chooses for us. And sometimes mistakes are not mistakes at all." Her hand brushed mine. The warmth of her touch was alien and familiar all at once. I realized then that the Heir's mistake had been a test not just of my abilities, but of my heart. And somehow, despite the war, the political intrigue, and the staggering differences between our species, I had passed. Months later, I would reflect on that day. The day the Heir made a mistake and I, a human soldier, opened the door. I would think of the battles fought, the lessons learned, and the trust earned. But more than anything, I would remember Caliph, the being who was not only a princess and a warrior, but a companion who taught me that sometimes the boundaries between duty and destiny blur, and that courage is measured not in victories, but in choices. I had come as a soldier, expecting orders, expecting protocol, expecting predictability. I left as something entirely different, guardian, confidant, and perhaps, in ways words cannot capture, a part of a world I never imagined I could belong to. And the door? It remains, shimmering, waiting. Not for me, perhaps, but for the next choice, the next mistake, the next human willing to cross the threshold into the unknown.